boom. Okay, so after a long interruption, we are in Perek Zayin. To recap quickly, can I have this, Navi, please? This one. Thank you. And we saw the birth of Shmuel, then we switched away. We saw the birth of Shmuel, the first Nevuah. Then we switched away a little bit from Shmuel, and we had the happenings of Am Yisrael at war and the Aaron that went to the Pelishtim and came back. Now we are at the end of Perek Vav. We have the Aaron that comes back to Am Yisrael, and they, for the purpose of continuity, we're going to start our learning from the end of Perek Vav Pasuk Chaf, so that we are right with the people of Bet Shemesh that received the Aaron back from the Pelishtim. We're in Perek Vav Pasuk Chaf, just for the end, because there's a transition, there's a flow between the end of Perek Vav and the beginning of Perek Zayin that will lead one to the other. So Vayomron Bet Shemesh, the people of Bet Shemesh said after they received the Aaron back and they were hit with a big plague, Hashem punished the people of Bet Shemesh for not treating the Aaron properly or for other reasons that are not explicitly mentioned. Who could stand in front of this very holy God? And to who will the Aaron go from us? Meaning we have to part with the Aaron. We cannot keep the Aaron in our city. So they decided they have to send the Aaron somewhere else or to a place that would be more suitable. And they sent messengers to the people of the city of Kiryat Yarim, Lemor, saying, Heshivu Pelishtim, the Pelishtim have returned, et Aaron Elokim, the Aaron of Hashem, Redu, come down, ha'alu oto alechem, and bring it up to you. I remember that we made a parallel between the way that the Bnei Israel treated Aaron and the way the Pelishtim treated Aaron, that they both felt that they couldn't keep the Aaron in their city, so the Pelishtim was sending it from place to place. And here we see exactly the same thing, that the Bnei Israel received the Aaron back and they said, we can't keep it, we have to send it somewhere else. But there is a difference, is that with the Pelishtim, by the Pelishtim, it says Vayesovevu, and they turned it from place to place, and by the Bnei Israel is Veheelu, they brought it up, they elevated the Aaron. The purpose of moving the Aaron away from them, away from their city, was not just to get rid of it, it was to give more prestige to the Aaron. So they sent it to a city called Kiryat Yarim, and Kiryat Yarim, we're a little unfamiliar with that city. So there is something very interesting. If we want to know what happened in the city or where a city is located, this one is not really a Navi, it's really more commentaries. But there's the Psukim. Here, this is a Navi. So in Sefer Yeshua, which is two Sfarim before, it's the first book that talks about Bnei Israel being in Eretz Yisrael. We have the story of how Yeshua enters Eretz Yisrael with Bnei Israel, how he conquers the land. And then at the end is what we call the Borim Prakim, but they're actually loaded with a wealth of information, which is which cities go where. And the psukim go a little bit like this, like if you go north, you will see that city, and then on the east, you will see that city and that city on the left, and then you enter Nachala of this Shevet, and you have this and you have that. So it looks, like from a teacher's perspective, when you teach it in a class, it looks like super boring because you just have list of cities and their location. You're like, what do I do with it? It's not really interesting. However, when you study the other Sfarim of the Tanakh, you encounter names of cities and you're like, where is this? I have no idea. Bet Shemesh, it's easy because it still exists today. Kiryat Yarim, we don't know really where it is. So Kiryat Yarim is actually mentioned in Sefer Yoshua, and Kiryat Yarim, interestingly, is a city that belongs to a tribe of Givonim, that used to belong to a tribe of Givonim. Givonim was a nation that tricked Bnei Israel into making a partnership with them. So it belongs to them, and it was a city that was considered a holy city by the Givonim. So we would think, is it possible that the Bnei Israel sent the Aaron to a city that was considered holy, even though it was not holy to them, it was considered holy in general? So actually, it is also mentioned that Kiryat Yarim is a city that belongs to the Nachala of Binyamin. And in the Nachala of Binyamin, we'll also have the Beis HaMikdash. So it was a city that was close to Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim did not belong to Bnei Israel at that time. So they had no reason of sending it to Yerushalayim because it was not part of their territory. It will actually become part of the territory only by the time of David HaMelech. And right after David HaMelech will conquer Yerushalayim in Shmuel base, the first thing he will do is actually bring the Aron to there. So here they sent it to Kiryat Yarim because it's a city that is in the Nachala that they know will be the permanent place of the Aron eventually. So the people of Kiryat Yarim, how are they going to respond? Maybe they will say, no, you keep your trouble for you. Yeah.
Why don't they send the Aaron to the Mishkan? It wasn't in Shiloh, but it was somewhere else, right?
Repeat your question.
You had mentioned that the Mishkan in Shiloh had been destroyed.
Correct.
It had been moved. I don't remember the name of the city.
Nov.
And Nov?
Nov.
Nov. Why did they not send the Aaron to Nov?
Excellent question. So, the fact is that the fact that they didn't send the Aaron to Nov was a problem in and within itself, because how can you separate the Mishkan from the Aaron? There are things that are done in the Mishkan through the Aaron. The Aaron brings the Shekhinah into the Mishkan. Hashem used to speak to the Nevi'im through the Kruvim, from between the Kruvim. It was a big issue. There's also parts of the Avodah of Yom Kippur that is done by the Aaron specifically. There is also the fact that the completion of the Mishkan was done through the bringing of the Aaron. There's a lot of issues. There's also, I'll take your question 1 second. There's also a question, do we do Aliyah LaRegel for the Aaron or for the rest of the Mishkan? It has a lot of ramification, a lot of it brings up a lot of issues to have the Aaron separated from the Mishkan. So what was the reasoning? The reasoning was that everybody knew that eventually the permanent place of the Shekhinah is in Yerushalayim. But they didn't have Yerushalayim. They didn't have a Beis HaMikdash. All they had now was the Mishkan. The world was not ready for the Beis HaMikdash to be present. So the same way that we are waiting for our Beis HaMikdash, they were waiting for their development, their spiritual development, to be ready for the building of the Beis HaMikdash. You couldn't just build a Beis HaMikdash like this. So they knew they didn't have the Beis HaMikdash, but they knew that eventually that's where it would be. They said transporting the Aaron is a big issue. They assumed that the reason why they suffered so much from the Aaron is that they took the Aaron out of the Mishkan. That was the first problem, that they took it out of the Mishkan and they brought it to the battlefield. So they said transporting the Aaron is dangerous. We want to have the least possible to do with the Aaron. Not in the sense we don't want to deal with it, but we don't want to have an interaction with it. It's too intense. There's too many things at stake. There are too many details to take into consideration. We want to limit our interaction so that we don't suffer from it. So they said we're going to put it somewhere that is considered special and that we will not have to move it until it goes to its permanent place. So that was the reasoning. Yes.
I was wondering if there was like a time between when the Mishkan and Shiloh destroyed and then like how much time was there?
Excellent question. So it doesn't give us exactly a timeline, but it's assumed that right away they transferred from Shiloh to Nov. However, the Mishkan stayed in Shiloh for over 300 years, for 364 years, if I remember correctly. And it is said that just seeing the place of Shiloh, even from far, people would be infused with Kedusha. So the place of Shiloh was a place of very high Kedusha. The place of Nov, and afterwards it will move again in Givon, it will not be considered as Kadosh, because it's considered really not permanent. We'll see it will exist for about 20 years until David comes and builds the Beis HaMikdash. So the amount of the level of Shekhinah there would be much less intense, and especially they didn't have the Aaron. So very, very interesting. Actually, Rassi, your husband told me about it, that there is still the foundations of the Mishkan in Shiloh. You saw it. Wow. Yeah. So yeah, they have. No, they have the site of the Mishkan in Shiloh. We didn't go.
No,
We-
I'm saying the Navi Shmuel part, they had a whole thing of if it's Sheila or not Sheila.
Right, but it wasn't she. And so they have a site where they consider that this is the place where the Mishkan was. And there is I think I mentioned it when we learned Perek Aleph, that Rebbetzin Yemima Mizrahi, she brings groups of women to say Tfilas Chana there. It's I mean, I can't imagine the experience, but it's quite strong. So there are people who still visit the place. All right. So how do people of Kiryat Yarim respond when they are told, please come and get the Aron? Vayavohu anshe Kiryat Yarim, and the people of Kiryat Yarim came. Vayalu, we are the first pasuk of Perek Zayin. Vayalu et Aron Hashem, and they brought up. You see, there's still that idea of uplifting. Vayalu et Aron Hashem, and they brought up the Aron of Hashem. Vayaviu oto, and they brought it. So where are they going to bring it? They bring it to someone's house. El Beit Avinadav. To the house of Avinadav, Bagiv'a, in the Giva, in the valley, on a hill. Ve'et Elazar beno, and his son Elazar, Kideshu, they sanctified, Lishmor et Aron Hashem, to guard the Aron of Hashem. Now, how do you sanctify someone to guard the Aron? So let's think about what does the word Kadosh mean. We know the word Kadosh means good. So usually we translate it as holy. But what makes something holy is that it's separated. What do we do with Afrashas Chala? We separate a piece, and that makes it holy. What makes us holy is that we are a separate nation. What makes a married woman, how do we call a married woman as soon as she's married? What does the Rav say under the chuppah? Mekudeshes. Because she's separate from the rest of the women in the world. She is the one who belongs to her husband. So here, this man, Elazar, he is the son of Avinadab, and he is going to dedicate his life from now on to take care of the Aaron. Yes.
Okay. Am I reading too much into this, or do we see Nadav, Avihu, and Elazar in the class? Right? It's like so. It's very cool.
So what I read in this Sefer of Mashiach Chosim is that he says, and it is possible that Elazar is a Gilgul of the son of Aaron, who was also responsible for the utensils of the Mishkan. But maybe I'm making a mistake. Who knows? And Hashem should guard me from making any mistakes in interpreting the Navi. So this Rav, his name is Rabbi Moshe David Valley. He was a student of the Ramchal, and he wrote a book, Abi Kabbalah, on the Navi. It's very deep Chassidus. So like you pretend you understand half the things you skip because it's like Abba ve'ima, the Safa Gilgul, like the Rantin, You're like, yeah, for sure. But like in general, you get the idea. All right. So he said that possibly it is a Gilgul of the son of Aaron. But who knows? But Elazar will see him again next Sefer when David will bring the Aaron to Yerushalayim. It will say that Elazar is giving him the Aaron.
Are they Kohanim?
So it is not specified whether they are Kohanim or not. It doesn't say. All right. Vayehi miyom shevet ha'aron b'kiryat Yarim, and from the moment that the Aaron sat in Kiryat Yarim, vayirbu hayamim, and the days were many, not just the many days. Vayu esrim shana, it was 20 years. Vayinahu kol bet Yisrael acharei Hashem, and all Bnei Israel moved towards Hashem. Right here, we are starting the heart of the identity of Perek Zayin. Perek Zayin is the idyllic Perek of the Torah. Everything is ideal. We'll see Bnei Israel are in a perfect state of Kedusha. They're going to do a perfect teshuvah. We're going to see again Shmuel leading the nation. Again, we're going to see Shmuel for the first time leading the nation. In this Perek is going to be the only Perek in the entire Sefer, which is named after Shmuel and which we have watched his upbringing with so much intensity. It is the only Perek where Shmuel is the sole active leader. And when we see Shmuel in action, how is Shmuel as a leader? We spoke so much about him, but we didn't see him much because in the previous 3 Perek, but like by the time he became a Navi, he disappeared. So what do we know about him? How is he going to be guiding the people? And here we're going to see, yeah, that's an excellent question. How old is he by now already? We don't even know. But here we see Vayu Esrom Shana. There's already 20 years that passed. And we saw already that Vayigdal, we already saw that he grew up when he was in the Mishkan. And now Esrom Shana. Shmuel is already a full-grown adult. We don't know exactly how old because I don't know how many years are between Perek Zayin and Perek Chet. But if you look at the beginning of Perek Chet, shocking, beginning of Perek Chet, look at Pasuk Aleph in Perek Chet, Vayehi Ka'asher Zaken Shmuel. And it was when Shmuel was old. Hello, he just was born. He's already old. So we don't know exactly how many years are between Perek Zayin and Perek Chet, but Shmuel is in the peak of his leadership is in Perek Zayin, and that's going to be the only Perek where we see Shmuel as the sole leader. We'll see him guiding the people and guiding the king later, and we'll see his interactions with the people, but he will speak to the people when there's already a king in place. So he is the Navi together with the king, not just the Navi and the Shefet, like he is right now. So what will happen is that in this Perek is like closing the circle. We have the circle started in Perek Dalet with the beginning of the war, and that Bnei Israel, we saw they were not at the right level that they thought they were. And here we're going to have a full circle. I'm going to see a complete teshuvah and complete reparation. Let's think before we start, what are the steps of teshuvah so that when we read, we can identify, as we read, we pay attention to this. What are the steps of teshuvah? How do we start? What is the process of teshuvah? Number one, charata, we regret. Number 2, so that's after. We have to say our sin, admit our sin. We say, this is what I did. Then Kabbalah Latid, and we take upon ourselves that in the future, it will not happen. I will not do it again. And when do you see an actual teshuvah is when you are again in the same situation and you don't do it again. All right. So in charata, in regretting our fault, there is all kinds of things. There's davening, there's crying, there is fasting, there is things that giving tzedakah, things like that. All right. So we have that in mind. And let's go on Pasuk Gimel. So Bnei Israel are moving towards Hashem, which is already a beautiful thing. However, we'll see that there is something missing in their movement towards Hashem. What is that thing missing? Let's see Pasuk Gimel. Vayomer Shmuel el kol bet Israel, and Shmuel says to the whole house of Israel, Lemor, saying, Im bechol levavchem atem shavim el Hashem. If you're returning to Hashem with all your heart, hasiru et Elokei hanechar mitochechem. Remove the foreign gods from within yourselves. The ashtarot and the ashtarot, the decorative trees that you're making for the Avodah Zarah. So here, what do I see? I see Bnei Israel completely willing to do teshuvah. They're like, yeah, Hashem, we love you. We're going to do all the mitzvahs and things. No, but we'll keep the little Avodah Zarah just in case, No, like it's part of our culture. It's, it's been here for centuries. We'll respect it. Natives, all these things. We keep it in addition to serving Hashem. Today, the concept is completely foreign. The analogy I would dare to bring is someone, being really into watching a lot of sports, movies, and things that are chol, that are very secular. And at the same time, being very religious, and we're like, no, it's not a contradiction. I'm doing things that are very secular and very religious, and on a different level. I'm not saying it's Avodah Zarah, just to have an idea of people who don't watch movies, and people who that they would think that it's something negative, and people who are immersed in Torah, and they say, no, but if I'm immersed in Torah, I can't watch movies. And people would say, no, but it doesn't contradict. It's nothing. I'm not saying movies. I'm saying really, I am saying movies. I'm not saying good movies. I'm saying bad movies. We understand. All right. So anyway, the culture is it's interesting because if I was giving this class, let's say in Beis Rivka, right? Or I'm giving this class in Israel, where the mentalities are really set. You have like explicit expectations that are openly and extremely high. I wouldn't be embarrassed to say that. I would give that example, and that would be the perfect example. Like not going to the basketball games and not being involved in anything that's secular. And that would be perfectly understandable that if you're in the secular world, you're in the secular world. If you're in the Jewish world, you're in the Jewish world. But here we have in our culture, it's so like you have shluchim organizing events at the stadium, and it's 100% okay. The LEC Gala is at the stadium, 100% okay, because it's in our culture and it's acceptable. So in a way, what? Right, but for example, at the Olympics, it was not. The Olympics,
themselves are a problem.
what? The Olympics are a problem, right?
A problem.
I mean, I don't, you're saying like the Rebbe supporter, I'm not questioning or doubting. I'm just saying like in my family, for example, and we're from France. So like soccer is a really big thing. We never watched soccer at home, even in the World Cup, even when France was finalist. It just didn't happen.
1998.
1998? No. My brothers ran to the neighbors to watch it in hiding, but they did like, it didn't come into the house.
We can say it's needed.
It's news. Yeah. Huh?
Unexpected. We didn't know we ever, I was in France then, sorry.
In 1998?
Ended up in the victory parade and we didn't know what was going on.
We don't talk about it.
So in a way, Avodah Zarah in the time of the Tanakh, where the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah was something very existent. Bnei Yisrael are making a massive teshuvah movement, but they're still serving Avodah Zarah and they have no issue with it. All right. So now Shmuel tells them, no, you have to remove the Avodah Zarah from yourself. Ve'achinu levavchem, and prepare your hearts. El Hashem, ve'achinu levavchem, and direct your hearts. El Hashem, towards Hashem, which they already did. But here is the novelty. Ve'ivdu levado, and serve him, only him, by himself. Ve'yatzel etchem miyad Pelishtim, and then Hashem will save you from the Pelishtim. There is something very, very interesting. There is, I don't remember if it's the Ramban or the Abarbanel, that says that learning Sefer Shmuel is learning about the Melucha, about the kingship. And the kingship on earth is a reflection of Hashem's kingship that comes down to earth. So it's a reflection of Hashem's kingship. And you cannot say Shema Yisrael properly if you didn't learn Sefer Shmuel. Why? Because Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. There is Hashem, he's our God, and he's only one. So that reflects the royalty of Hashem. And here we see, that is what Shmuel is telling them. Shmuel is telling them, you're serving Hashem. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu. You are doing Hashem Elokeinu. But v'ivdu levado, it's Hashem Echad, that's the end of the Pasuk. You have to serve Hashem, only Hashem. You can't combine him with other things. The Pasuk is not complete without it. The unity of Hashem in the world is not complete without serving only Hashem. And this would be the condition for Hashem to serve you, to save you from the Pelishtim. So what did Bnei Israel do? Look at this, like idyllic, really. Pasuk Dalet, Vayasiru Bnei Israel, and the Bnei Israel removed et ha-be'alim ve'et ha-ashtarot, the Avodah Zarahs of Baal and Ashtarot, Vayavdu et Hashem levado, and they serve Hashem only. Yay, exactly. You feel like you're watching a happy end story. Vayomer Shmuel, Shmuel says, look, you're like such a high place. You're doing everything properly. You're being an amazing people for Hashem. Kibtzu et kol Israel. Let's gather the entire Am Yisrael, HaMitzpata, in Mitzpeh. What is Mitzpeh? Mitzpeh is a place where Bnei Israel have a custom of gathering there. So because there's a custom of gathering there for two reasons. Number one, it's a very large area. Number two, three reasons. Number two, mitzpeh comes from the word seeing. And what is it that you see in mitzpeh is that you see Shiloh from mitzpeh. And we said that seeing Shiloh infuses you with holiness. Number three, there was a war that happened in mitzpeh. with Yoshua, and Hashem helped Bnei Israel tremendously in that war. So it's a place that for Bnei Israel, there is more rachamim in that place. So that's why he gathers them there. And then look at what Shmuel offers them. Ve'etpalel ba'atchem el Hashem, and I will daven for you to Hashem. Magnificent, what a leader. Tells them, look, you did such a good job. You did everything you were supposed to do. Now, as your leader and as your intermediary between the people and Hashem, I will daven for you. The Bnei Israel follow. Pasuk Vav, ve'ikaptzu hamitzpata, and they gather in Mitzpeh. Now, what do they do in Mitzpeh? Ve'ishavu mayim, and they drew water in Mitzpeh. Ve'ishpechu lifnei Hashem, and they poured it in front of Hashem. What type of ritual is that? Ve'yatzumu, and they even fasted. Bayom ahu, on that day. Vayom Sham, and they said there, Chatanu laHashem, we sin towards Hashem. Vayishpot Shmuel et bnei Israel v'mitzpeh, and Shmuel judged the people in Mitzpeh. It's a long pasuk and a little bit confusing. There's a lot of different parts. So number one, they go to Mitzpeh. Fine, we understand. Shmuel told them, let's go to Mitzpeh. Yeah. Vayishavu mayim vayishpechu lifnei Hashem. They drew water and they poured it in front of Hashem. What's going on? So actually, all the commentaries are wondering what is going on. What is that drawing of water? So they're all agreeing to the fact that the water represents tears and represents nullifying themselves in front of Hashem. So Veishavu Maim is as an expression to say they how do we say in English? They cried like water? No, like rivers.
They cried rivers.
They cried rivers of tears. Thank you. So the idea of the water that was pouring out of their eyes, that they were pouring their heart out to Hashem. They said they were pouring their hearts like water. So yeah, so it's an adapted translation always, because the translation is always trying to be as close to the text as possible. But as soon as there's something complicated, it will not tell you here complicated area. It will just adapt it. So when you face the psukim, you realize that there is a complication. So Veishavu mayim veishpechu lifnei Hashem, they poured their heart in front of Hashem like water. Vayatzumu, and they fast. So here we see they're crying. So we have the process of teshuvah. Vayatzumu, and they fast. So there is again this idea of teshuvah. Like we have an image in our head. If we're imagining what they're doing, it sounds a little bit like Yom Kippur. They're crying, they're fasting. And they say we sin towards Hashem. This is really this is the vidui. There's really a full process of teshuvah. And not only that, Veishpat Shmuel et bnei Israel b'mitzpeh. Really, Shmuel thought it was a good time to bring up all the dirty laundry and to judge people. Say, oh, 1 second, you have issues. Let me figure it out. So Shmuel's reasoning was like this. He said, look, you're doing such a big teshuvah towards Hashem. Now is the perfect time to make the situation really complete. Because sometimes there's iniquities between people. People are upset at each other for various reasons. Let me figure it out. Let me help you out. Let's see what's going on. Did you do something wrong to someone? Do you owe something to someone? Is there any hurt feelings between people? And he judged them so that even between people, not only towards Hashem, even between people, there would be peace. And when there's shalom, there's bracha. Pasuk Zayin. We have something that's going to break that idyllic picture. And the Pelishtim heard that the Bnei Israel gathered in Mitzpeh. So what do? They say, 1 second. All Bnei Israel in Mitzpeh is the perfect time to attack them. They're all gathered already. We don't have to go from city to city. They're all there. Easy. Number 2, there's another opinion that says they figured, why would they gather in Mitzpeh all of a sudden? Obviously, they're preparing a war against us, so we'll attack them first. So those two views. So what do? Sure enough, Vayalu sarne Pelishtim el Israel, and the dignitaries of the Pelishtim go up to Eretz Israel. Vayishmeu bnei Israel, and bnei Israel hear that the Pelishtim are coming. Vayiru mipnei Pelishtim, and they feared from the Pelishtim. Do you see a parallel, a mirror situation with the previous story? So if we look in Pasuk Daled, in Perek Daled, when we have the first war against the Pelishtim, this is a perfect mirror. In Perek Daled, we have the war from the Pelishtim, and we have the Pelishtim that see, it's the opposite. That's why I said mirror, the opposite situation. Sorry, I'm in Gimel. Perek Daled is here. And we have Vayarchu Pelishtim likrat Israel. So I'm looking. We have Perek Daled. We're going to look at the second battle. Pasuk Vav. Vayishmeu Pelishtim et kol haTruah. No, sorry. Pasuk Zayin. Perfect. Vayir'u Pelishtim. The Pelishtim fear. We are in the Bnei Israel just brought Aaron. The Pelishtim are scared. And here we see that it's the Bnei Israel that are scared. See, the Bnei Israel are scared in front of the Pelishtim. So what are they going to do now? They are faced in the same situation that there is a war between Bnei Israel and Pelishtim. Previous time, Bnei Israel thought they were going to lose. I mean, they saw they lost. So to save themselves, what did they do? They brought Aaron, and we saw that it was catastrophic. So here, what are they going to do? ויאמרו בני ישראל אל שמואל. So Bnei Israel say to Shmuel, Al tacharesh mimenu. Do not make yourself deaf towards us, to us. Mizeok el Hashem Elokeinu, from screaming to Hashem, our God. Veyoshienu, and he will save us, miyat Pelishtim, from the hand of the Pelishtim. And here we see the perfect opposite of what was done. Because beforehand, Bnei Israel, when they saw that they were losing against the Pelishtim, they said, Lama negafanu Hashem, nikra elenu mishilo et Aaron berit Hashem, veyavo bekirbenu veyoshienu. The Aaron will come among us, and it will save us. And here, what do they say? Speak to us, scream to Hashem, so Hashem will save us from the Pelishtim. So here, clearly, explicitly, we see how now they rely entirely on Hashem. And what happens? What is Shmuel going to do? Pasuk Tet, Vayikach Shmuel, peace of mind. Vayikach Shmuel, tele. So we have, just so that we have the image clearly, we have a massive group, hundreds of thousands of people gathered in a vast area. And in the horizon, we see an enemy army that is coming, ready to attack them. They say, Shmuel, help us. Ask Hashem to help us. And what is Shmuel's reaction? Shmuel's reaction is like this, Pasuk Tet. Vayikach Shmuel, and Shmuel took tele chalav echad, a small, tele is a baby.
Like a nursing lamb.
Yeah, baby lamb, yes. Tele chalav echad, a nursing lamb, a baby lamb. Vayalehu ola kalil la Hashem, and he brings it as an ola korban to Hashem. We read that in a few words. To bring a korban, it's a process. It takes time. It takes time. You have to choose your animal. You have to shecht it. You have to prepare it. You have to build a mizbeach. You have to light the fire. You have to burn it. It takes time. You have an enemy army in front of you. Is that what you're doing? Don't you want to organize your people? Do something. I'm bringing a korban. Vayizak Shmuel el Hashem, and Shmuel screamed to Hashem, Be'ad Israel, on behalf of Am Israel, Vayanehu Hashem, and Hashem answered him. It doesn't say very often that Hashem answered explicitly, that Hashem answers the prayer of someone who davens. So here we have, Vayizak Shmuel el Hashem, Vayanehu Hashem, and Hashem answered him. Very explicitly. So much so that in the Slichot, we say Anenu Hashem Anenu, and we say Anenu, like you answered this one and like you answered that one. And one of the things that we say, like you answered Shmuel in Mitzpeh. It is one of those magnificent moments that Hashem answered Am Yisrael. Now, we see a very, very, very crucial point to take from this pasuk is how there is an emergency, there's a war, there's an attacker, Shmuel says, I take the time to speak to Hashem. I take the time to address Hashem directly. Nothing is too urgent and too important for me to take the time to speak to Hashem. I feel a little bit double-faced when I say this because I'm not the steadiest davener, but that shows how, like, when we say, no, I don't have time to daven. Really? We don't? So there was I read a poem one day. It was a woman that was saying, I don't have time because I don't have time to daven because I need to do my laundry, I need to take my kids to school, and I need to take my baby to the doctor, and I need to do this, and I need to do that, so I can daven, and that's why I can. And then she switched it, and she says, and because I need to do all these things, that's why I daven, so that I can actually do that.
There's a podcast called Human and Holy. I don't know if you've ever encountered it. She just started a tefillah series where she has like different people talk about tefillah and like ways to connect tefillah in a deeper way. Pretty good.
And they're coming out.
Yeah, she's coming out with like resources, but like even the podcast. Pretty good.
Who is the person doing it? Oh, she's bringing out different people, you said.
Great, yeah. Her name is Tanya. Some Bob's last name.
What did you say?
Khazana.
Got it.
But she brought this one woman from who lives in Eretz Yisrael, and who's basically she's a Gemara teacher. Very good.
In general.
All right.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. All right. So here, clear example how in the middle of a crisis, Shmuel takes the time to bring a korban. Now, Shmuel said, it says, "Vayizak Shmuel el Hashem be'ad Yisrael," and Shmuel cried to Hashem on behalf of Am Yisrael. Shmuel turns to Hashem and says, Hashem, by the merit of Am Yisrael, they deserve that you will answer their prayer and you will save them. And Vayaneu Hashem, and Hashem answered him. Hashem answered Shmuel for his own merit. Right? So we see how in his address to Hashem as a leader, Shmuel is not being superior and saying, well, because I'm the leader, so obviously I'm the best person to address you. He says, no, I'm addressing you, but by the merit of the people. There is the idea of when you put others before you, then you are being answered, even though here they're asking for the same cause. It's not that he's asking for his benefit. He's asking for their benefit, and Hashem answers him in something differently. But there's the idea of davening for someone else instead of davening for yourself, or in addition to davening for yourself. Vayehi Shmuel ma'aleh ha'olah, and look, I told you it takes time. Pasuk Yud, Shmuel is still bringing the olah. Vayehi Shmuel ma'aleh ha'olah, and it was when Shmuel was bringing the olah. Upelishtim nikshu la'milchama be'Yisrael. They approached Am Yisrael for the war. Vayarem Hashem, and Hashem thundered, Bekol Gadol, in a great voice, Bayom Ahu, on that day, ala Pelishtim, on the Pelishtim, Vayehumem, and he confused them, Vayinakfu lifnei Israel, and they fled from in front of Israel. Vayetzu, Anshe Israel, and the people of Israel went out, Mina Mitzpeh, from Mitzpeh, Vayerdefu et Pelishtim, and they chased the Pelishtim, Vayakum, Ad midachat Beit Kar, and they hid them until Beit Kar. Vayikach, with Pasuk Yud Bet, Vayikach Shmuel even achat, and Shmuel took one stone, Vayasem ben Mitzpeh uven Hashen, and he put between Mitzpeh and between the tooth, the place that is called Shen, or it's a shape in the mountain that looks like a tooth. It's like usually a dent between two mountains. Vayikra et Shema, and he called the name of that stone Even HaEzer, the stone of help. Vayomar, and he said, Ad hena azaranu Hashem, until here Hashem has helped us. You are friendly.
Didn't they go to war with the Pelishtim in a place called Ebenezer?
Correct.
The same
Correct.
place?
No. And that's what makes it a full circle. That's what makes it a full circle. And if I may ask, do you remember what happened when they brought the Aaron to the battlefield? That they were so excited that the earth trembled. Vayariu teruah gdola, and they made a big teruah. And here we have the same words. Vayarem Hashem bekol gadol. And Hashem here is doing all the work. Hashem is making his thundering. Hashem is making the great voice. Before it was Bnei Israel, wrongly. Here Hashem acts on their behalf, and the entire situation is being completely fixed. There's a repeat, but it's not a repeat the way it was. It's a repeat in a perfected way. I would like to take this situation to bring in another idea that everything that happens to Bnei Israel in that era is actually, it's the formation of Bnei Israel, the spiritual formation of Bnei Israel. The same way that we know, like when we talk about Ikvata de Mishicha, that we are the heel of the generation. So it's as if the entire Jewish history is forming a spiritual body for the Jewish people. And here we are, the Bnei Israel in their spiritual formation, but they're in the infancy of their formation because they're at the beginning of their history. So everything that happens, they are actually fixing different midas that they need to fix in the Knesset Israel, not in an individual level, on the level of the entire nation, that they're fixing in order to prepare the nation to bring in more holiness. We just had Yuchvat a week ago, and Yuchvat we talk about Basilagani, about the Shekhinah that comes down to earth, and we know that when did the Shekhinah come back to this world? By Matan Torah, and then afterwards it left with Chet HaEgel, and when did it come back again? By the Beis HaMikdash. So here, slowly, I told you that in next Sefer, David is going to build the Beis HaMikdash. So here we see that slowly, Bnei Israel are getting closer and closer to the Gilui of Hashem. So everything they do is in order to improve the klali, the general state, the general spiritual state of the people. So here we see in a way how they are being so, they're being so metaken. They're fixing really, they're doing a real work of reparation, of spiritual reparation and preparation for the revealing of Hashem, just so that we have the context clear. Pasuk Yud Aleph. We did that. So here we see a lot of comparisons between the first war and the second war. I will not take the time to go into it, but there is it's very, very, very clear how the first time the Philistines had such an easy time killing 30,000 people. Here the Bnei Israel are just running, chasing them because there is no real fight. It's they won the war before they even started, because the Philistines were so confused and they just ran away before the fight even started. And then the cherry on the top is how Shmuel calls the place Even Haezer, and we know that in the first time they fought in Even Haezer. All right, and say Hashem. Hashem helped us until here, and we mark the place. Pasuk Yud Gimel, Vayikanu HaPelishtim, and if we thought that this is a temporary victory, Vayikanu HaPelishtim, and the Pelishtim were subdued. Velo yasfu od lavo bigvul Israel. They did not continue to come to the territory of Am Yisrael. Vatei yad Hashem b'Pelishtim, and the hand of Hashem was on the Pelishtim. Kol yemei Shmuel. The entire life of Shmuel, the Pelishtim are not attacking anymore. So this is a massive victory. It's not just, oh, we win the war until the next Intifada. There's no more wars with the Pelishtim. And not only that, we'll see that the peace that they will have with the Pelishtim will spread, because peace has that beautiful effect that it can spread. We're going to see that there will be peace with other countries as well. Not only they made peace, they also returned them cities. And the cities that the Pelishtim had taken returned. That the Pelishtim had taken from Eretz Israel returned to Israel. Mekron ve'ad Gat, from Ekron to Gat, the cities that we saw in the previous Perek that were cities of Pelishtim, ve'ad Gevulan and their borders, Hitzil Israel mi'ad Pelishtim, Israel saved them from the hands of the Pelishtim, Vayehi Shalom ben Israel, and there was Shalom between Israel, Uven ha'Emori, and between the Emorim. What do the Emorim come to do in the picture? Who called them in? They were not invited. Who are they, Bichlal? Okay, the Emorim are one of the 7 nations that live in Eretz Israel, and they're one of the nations that represent intense klipa. But because Bnei Israel were in such a high state of kedusha, their klipa did not have any effect whatsoever on the Kiddush of Ben Israel. So they couldn't have a bad relationship with them. So they made peace with them too. פסוק ט"ו, וישפוט שמואל את ישראל כל ימי חייו. Shmuel judged Am Yisrael all the days of his life. והלך, and how did he do to judge them? This is beautiful. So the last few psukim, well, the Perek is almost finished, but the last few psukim, they talk about how Shmuel judged the people. Very, very beautiful. והלך מדי שנה בשנה, and he would go from year to year, וסבב, and he would make rounds. בית כל, והגילגל, והמצפה, he would go to בית כל, to Gilgal, its places in Eretz Israel, והמצפה, ושפט את ישראל, and he judged Israel את כל המקומות האלה in all these places. ותשובתו הרמתה, and he would return to Ramah, כי שם ביתו, because his house is there. ושם שפט את ישראל, and he judged Israel there also, ויבן שם מזבח להשם, and he built a מזבח to Hashem there. I don't want to leave you just on just simple words. So what is it with Shmuel traveling to judge the people? Shmuel didn't wait for people to come to him. He went to the people. And we see here, we have a difference between Moshe and Shmuel. Moshe, we know how he judged the people, because at the beginning of Parashat Yisro, it describes it to us very clearly. It says Moshe would sit and people would line up, and all day long Moshe would judge them. Shmuel said, no. I'm going to you. You don't have to do an effort. I'm coming to your place. I am meeting you where you are, and I'm judging you there. There's no place that is too far from me that I will go to. And he would go there. If you think of the spheres in your mind, you have that diagram of the spheres. So there is the top, the bottom, the sides, the right, the left. So all these places that Shmuel would go to, they represent the spheres that Shmuel would go to and elevate. Geographically, it represents places that he would elevate, and different light sparks that he would elevate wherever he would go. And then it says, "Utshuvato haramata ki sham beito," and he will go back to Ramah because his house is there. Here we have two things. Number one is that Kisham Beito, his house is there. Is that when he traveled, Shmuel, he didn't rely on the community to support him. He took his house with him wherever he was, wherever he would go. He didn't want people to say, "Oh, Shmuel is here, it's great, but like it's an expense for us, we have to provide for him." He didn't want people to owe him. He didn't want to owe anything to anybody. And at the end of his life, he will give them a speech. He will tell them, "You can admit that I never took anything from you," and everybody will say, "Yes, that's true." Number two, he will go back to his house. He go back Haramata. His house is in Ramah. Ramah means a level. He goes back to his own level. He does not lose out on his spiritual level by going to the people. He doesn't diminish his distinction and his honor and any of his value by going out to the people. On the contrary, everybody knows him. And he's close to the people. People support him. And that's where that's how he led his life, all his life. He traveled from place to place. And next week, we're going to see what happens when he gets old. Because the next Perek starts with Vayike Asher Zaken Shmuel. And it was when Shmuel was old. Right? That's it.
Beautiful. It really feels like Shmuel was a rebbe. The idea of people's places, like it means like spiritually, if you would like meet people where they were spiritually and bring them up, right?
Correct.
Meaning like there was nobody that was too low for him. Like he wasn't above everybody. Like if he could connect to anybody, like a rebbe.
There's different comparison. So I didn't finish. I started with saying the difference between Moshe and Shmuel, and the Ababanel brings that's the reason why when Moshe would speak to Hashem, Moshe had to go to the Emel, and Hashem would speak to Moshe from the Kruvim. But for Shmuel, Hashem said, "You are traveling to the people, I will travel to you. Wherever you are, I will speak to you." But Moshe, because he made the people come to him, so Hashem made him come to him. So the respect for the community, that is so important, that to respect the tzibur, we think, oh, like whatever, people should do that for him. It's beyond that. It's beyond that level.